Can you hear us, Jeff?
I can hear you now, yeah.
Okay, great. All right, I think we're ready to go. All right, I'll call to order the July 8th, 2021 Public Works Committee. Can we get the roll call?
Alderman Lockmiller.
Here.
Alderman Tice.
Here.
Alderman Weggie.
Here.
All present.
Alderman Gould,
Oh,
present.
Alderman Gould, I'm sorry.
All right. Move on to approval and amendment of the agenda. Any changes or not? I assume we can approve that by acclamation. We have no announcements, appointments, proclamations, recognitions. Moving to citizen comments. I believe we have nobody calling in.
Correct.
All right. Go to report of committee chair and alderman. The only thing I have is I'd just like to thank Dan and everybody for got our composting bin delivered last week. So the whole family sat around the YouTube video and watched the video together, and we've already started. So expect beautiful flowers to come out of the Weggie house. Let's see, Alderman Gould.
Yes, thank you. It sounded like the compost thing was a big success, and we've sold out of them. So I think a lot of residents would be interested in what do we do next and how do we get more. I don't have one yet, but I wouldn't mind having one. I would also like to thank Dan for very quickly addressing the erosion issues that we were having along Rogers Parkway with some of the inlets there. It seems like some of those curbs have been restored. So I'm excited to kind of see if there are other areas that we need to do that too, because I think it will help.
I think we lost Alderman Gould. Okay, we'll pause.
Recording in progress.
All right, Jeff, we got you back.
Yeah, did you guys hear my?
The last we heard was thanking
all?
Dan for stormwater erosion on Rogers Parkway.
Yeah, fixing those curbs, I think helps keep the erosion down. I think there likely is other areas that we probably should inspect and make sure aren't having similar issues. But appreciate his attendance to that.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Steve?
No?
Yeah, I'd just like to pass along a thanks to Dan for fixing the curb on Magdalene. Homeowners very excited about it. Thanks.
Well, since we seem to be thanking Dan, I will verbally do that too and thank him for delivering barriers for the end of the block when some neighbors planned a block party yesterday. And it's just a great thing that the city provides those barriers to allow neighborhoods to have safe gatherings on the street and outside. So thank you.
Okay, great. We'll move into item 6, city administrator report. Bola, you got ARPA?
So I believe at the last meeting, the committee had a discussion on this, and there was agreement that the aldermen would also present and discuss this at their ward meetings. I just left this on the agenda in case there was a need for any additional discussion.
Anybody have anything they want to bring up related? Yeah.
Our ward meeting is next week, so I haven't had the opportunity to bring it up in Ward 1.
Okay.
Ward 3, we didn't have a meeting last month, and ours isn't until the end of this month.
Okay.
It's not a time-sensitive matter, right?
No, not really.
All right, Jeff, anything else on that?
No, I mean, I think were we still planning on hearing from the department heads on where they wanted to put effort into, or is that something that you wanted us to go back to our ward meetings and have a discussion with the residents about?
We can do that. We can have department directors present what they submitted to me that's in your packet.
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, if nothing's evolved from what they've submitted, I think we all have that, and so I don't have any additional comments. I think I sent an email a while back on in regard to that, but I'll have to go back and.
You did,
Yeah, and I would assume all the department head input would be going right to Ways and Means.
right.
And this is more just from a public works standpoint. Is there anything we need to be considering that might be outside of the
Right.
purview of Ways and Means?
Yeah, so and as it relates to that, I mean, I would be interested in hearing from Eric and Dan regarding public work specific things that were in the packet or in their suggestion. If there's some things that they'd like to have our input on, or specifically like us to take back to the residents for discussion, then that guidance would be helpful.
We can schedule that for next meeting, unless you all are prepared to discuss that tonight. You only have 2 items. Eric has a long list. You can go through them. It just depends on how long you want to be here.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to do that tonight, just if you're able and ready,
Okay,
if it's informally, just kind of.
it's
those
informal.
items.
Yeah, we can do that.
All right, let's do it.
So how about right now? Dan?
And I know we kind of discussed this, I believe, in public safety, but as far as public works, some of the items that we thought we could purchase with the funds would be, there was a transportable message sign. We don't have message boards. The message boards like we put up on Manchester for Brentwood Days, those, we either rent them or typically we can work out a partnership with another city. So we've used Clayton's, we've used Rock Hills. We'd like to get our own, but they'd be bigger than like the police, the little message board that's on their speed trailer. But it would be portable in the sense that I found a couple of vendors, they actually are solar powered. So you can use the battery for a couple of weeks, or you can put the solar collector and it would work indefinitely. But these are programmable with a smartphone. So they showed examples of like a COVID vaccination clinic at a fire department. They can put it on a tripod and put the sign out by the road with an arrow. You know, there's graphics you can download. So that was one item, and it depends on how expensive and how high tech you want it. You can get it that it's on a trailer, or you can get a portable one that folds up like a table. That was one item, and then the other one, going from memory, was paying back the sewer lateral. You know, we owe a few $100,000 to that fund, and we are paying it back each year. But this would just accelerate it. You'd pay it off as best you can, and the payback period would be greatly reduced. So those were two of the things that we thought we could tackle with Public Works. So that's pretty much it.
Any questions for Dan on those?
I guess I would, oh, go ahead.
No, I have one question. Is this transportable sign, message sign, is that something you have in your capital budget over the next few years, or is that just something new and different that you haven't?
And we had looked at them before, and the ones that were trailer mounted, they were typically $18,000 to $20,000. And because we only did use it maybe 2 times a year, there was no sense in buying it. And that's why I thought, well, the other one that's smaller isn't as big and could be used by police, fire, rec. Multiple departments could use it. You know, if there's like an electronics recycle event, you could put it over by Brentwood Boulevard by the rec center with an arrow flashing. And that's why I thought, well, these are nicer because they're way more transportable. They even make an option to put it on a trailer hitch. So you could put it on the back of a police vehicle or something that would scroll whatever messaging you want. Depends on how expensive you want to buy the particular piece of equipment. Some have like 2 lines and others have 3, but they'll scroll through multiple boards to get your message across. So, seemed pretty neat.
Thank you.
wondering maybe if we should have like a top tier of what people go through that round. I mean, I guess they could probably blow through the money left over. Something like a sewer lateral would just be a second.
Mhm.
Okay, I can compile the list and take it to, unless you want to rank them, the ones that pertain to this committee, and then I can take that to Ways and Means, and then they can rank them as well. So I think what I've been saying is that this is a one-time, bonus money, so to speak. So my recommendation is that the city should be very judicious in how it's expensed, because once it's gone, it's gone. So if there are projects that we could never really fund in our operating and capital budget that we've always set aside for down the line, they might be things that we want to spend this money on, rather than things that they can easily budget for if they prioritize it properly in the capital budget.
I know when we public safety, I mean, a lot of the things were just accelerating off
Yeah.
the 5-year capital plan.
That's right.
moving them up.
Right.
And things that, thinking out of the box or things that are emergency type thing.
Right.
I would think that would
Exactly.
be the first shot at that.
Okay. I can define that based on what you just said.
Okay, Eric, you want to give us your list?
So my list is very similar to what Alderman Lockmiller just said. So every year we rank our CIP, our capital improvement program, and so we basically have a ranking system of what we think are the most important projects within the city. So our 5 year is kind of our most important. I mean, trust me, I can spend money. That's not a problem. So if you need someone to spend money, I can definitely do it for you. But if we talk about sort of big visioning ticket items, which I know is one thing that you just talked about, the Greenway expansion for Rogers Parkway, which I know is something that's been kind of put on the back burner for a while. We're probably going to bring next month to the Public Works Committee the discussion of maybe splitting that up into segments and trying to get a STP grant for each segment. And maybe we could, package that with some of these funds to start focusing that forward, because that is, of anything, the biggest project that I have that has the most visioning that we could do for the department beyond our regular capital projects. And then obviously Brentwood bound too, so.
All right, yeah, Jeff.
Yeah, Eric, can you explain a little bit more of that? Are you saying that anything north of where the Brentwood bound project stops, anything sort of extending north on that, would we be doing, bringing the Rogers Parkway up to the Great Rivers Greenway Code standard?
So we basically I'm trying to think now, 2017, we did based on the idea of that we were trying to work with GRG and possibly looking to them for funding and different things, ultimately led to the Brentwood bound discussion. Did a design to expand the Greenway from Deer Creek, if we were going to connect it through Brentwood bound, from Manchester all the way to Strassner. And it was an expansion of the Greenway, making it more of a traditional Greenway. It included tons of improvements with roads like White would become a through road now, and the Greenway would go underneath White, things like that. It did kind of eliminate the two roads along the current Rogers Parkway. So it'd just be one road. I think if I remember correctly, it'd be on the side with your house, because that's where all the garages are, obviously. And then the road would just kind of snake that way, and then the rest of the side would be Greenway. And it's a beautiful, I mean, it's a plan. It won awards. I mean, the Architectural Society gave us an award for it. So it's a nicely done plan. It's again, it's a big plan, it's a visioning plan, it's multi-million dollars. Part of that is being done because the tunnel was included in that plan. So we've already kind of started that project. But we are talking, as we looked at STP grant possibilities, and maybe going to Mark Twain. And that way we could kind of take that first section off, even maybe look at a safe route to schools type grant as well to package with that. And we just realized that we need kind of to have that further discussion. We need to do community engagement, obviously, because we haven't done that yet. And so there's a lot to do. So basically, I'm giving you my presentation next month right now. So yeah, so there's a lot of kind of that we need to do before we can move forward with STP grant. But I sometimes forget, as a new alderman, you probably have never seen that plan.
No, I haven't. I definitely will have to look it up, and it sounds very interesting. And then are you thinking for big items like that we just talked about removing from Brentwood Bound, that would also be an expenditure outside of the Brentwood Bound project area? Now, things like redoing Brentwood Park to include a soccer field or two, or making the Hanley Dog Park a larger, more permanent structure with all the amenities that those members need. Is that something that you're thinking would be able to be covered with an existing budget, money, and that's why you wouldn't pursue that for this type of money, or what?
To be completely honest, when I gave this to Bull, this was early April. So we hadn't had that fully, the board hadn't approved to remove those items from Brentwood Bound. That's part of the discussion we're having tonight. So again, if that's something, again, those are a couple big, the dog park, not as much, but if Brentwood Park, we could, again, I could fix a lot of things with money down in Brentwood Park. So, I mean, if that's something we want to look at, I could definitely move forward on something like that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the overarching discussion of making that more into a sports complex and redesigning it would be a fairly large undertaking, but I think would be the right thing to do for the community. In that you'd have to move lighting and regrade all the proper land and move kind of the backstop structures and everything, I would guess. I think that would be something that would be worth exploring with this money and moving that along faster,
Right,
for
so
the
this is
community.
very premature, but if you take a look at the budget book and you look at the the Stormwater and Parks Improvement Fund, you will see that Eric has been able to add about, 300,000? Is that correct? Other than last year. How much have you been adding to fund balance?
The fund balance, somewhere between 150 and 300,000. Good years, we've gotten 450,000.
So there is a robust fund balance. And
Good.
obviously, there is a Parks Master Plan that identifies all the projects that we need to do in the park. So if all of a sudden this needs to be added to the Parks Master Plan, then we need to reprioritize. And what that means is that in Eric's capital budget, it's number one, and then he funds it, rather than using this kind of money for that.
Ironically, that is in my presentation along tonight as well, if we get to it. I have a very long presentation. I don't know if we'll get to it.
Well, I will stop asking questions then.
I'm happy to answer them.
Okay.
I do have one question. As we're talking about this, I would hope that we could also get some planning and development department recommendations too.
Well, actually, it's in here.
It's in there too, yeah.
And I can present that. So, under planning development, the department initiatives that we have in here is development of a stormwater master plan program. And Dan and I have been discussing that. And when we issued an RFP last year, the city selected Gonzalez Companies, and they have the capability to help the city develop a stormwater master plan. So Dan just told me before this meeting started that they want to meet to present to us what that would look like, what the cost would be, and then based on our reaction, we'll bring that back to this committee and have them present it to you, and then you all can decide whether we want to move forward, when we want to move forward, and how does that look. They do recommend that we have a master plan, that allows them to do an inventory throughout the community, both residential, commercial, and identify where the issues are. And then the board can start to decide funding of that. So that's probably going to be coming to you in August. So that's the first item on here. The second item is its implementation. And then the third is how do we stabilize and revitalize the neighborhood? So presently, the city has the Community Development Block Grant Program. We will be presenting that at the board meeting this month. Right now, it's a $5,000 forgivable loan for eligible home repairs. The recommendation is to increase the number of residents that can participate by maybe doubling or tripling the amount of money that we would allocate to that. So instead of the 20 that we get from the federal government, the city could add another 20 or 30,000 to it, and the eligibility would still be the same. So I was at the St. Louis Area City Managers meeting today, and the county did a presentation on this American Rescue Plan Act, but we are going to be asking for clarification to make sure that something like this can be funded through that program. So that's another way to help address deficiencies in housing structure throughout the community. Also, I think that this committee has also wanted the city to create new energy efficiency ordinances that would allow solar panels and sustainability initiatives, and we haven't undertaken that. So a consultant could help us with that, or when the new planning development director starts managing workload, that could be a task that could be assigned to that individual. So those are the three items that are on the list for planning development.
I was going to say thank you.
Still have a waiting list for that block grant?
I asked the county, they said no, there is no waiting list. We have had them in the past, but not recently.
Okay. All right, let's see, moving on to item 7, Department Commission Reports. So Public Works, Dan, you're up.
These are for informational purposes. So the first one is the Rosalie STP project. Just briefly, the folks at MoDOT gave us the approval to go ahead and advertise for bids. So if you go on the city's website and on the MoDOT website and a couple other different ad areas, you can find the Rosalie STP pedestrian improvements package. It's roughly 1,000 feet of sidewalk improvements on the south side between Brentwood Boulevard and Broughton Park, and it'll be street lighting as well. The bids are due on July 20th, so we'll be bringing those bids back to you all. And then we also simultaneously will be giving the bids to MoDOT so that they can concur and give approval as well. So assuming that everything is fine, then we would eventually bring back an ordinance or resolution, I forget which they require, but we'll ask for board approval. Next meeting we'll ask for the committee approval and then board approval at the August meeting, so we should be good there. I don't know if you have any specific questions. The other thing I put in here is that MSD finally confirmed that their contractor, Luth and Sons, will be doing the work on that block of Rosalie, but not until September. So hopefully we'll get out in front of them. Right now, I'm sure you've seen it's torn up. Spire is relocating the gas main and upgrading services because they don't want to be in there after we're tearing it up. They'd rather do it now, which is smart.
Is that what all those sidewalk cuts are?
Correct. So they said if there's an obsolete service, say like steel, they'll replace it with plastic from the main up to the house. And they'll just do that. And if it's regular plastic that doesn't need to be upgraded, then they'll just transfer it to the new main. So in case anybody asks you questions on that. And then regarding the streetlight update, I did notice Ameren was out there this week. I just haven't noticed them put any of the 5 lights in Brentwood for us. So if you remember, Reinhold put in the conduit, pulled the pull tape through. We're just waiting for Ameren. We've paid them. They're just going to set the 5 lights in Brentwood for us, pull the wiring, and energize those 5. So I'll go take a look at it tomorrow, but I know they are in the process of doing those. York Village, we've got just those two. I still haven't gotten approval on the other 3 possible locations, but the 2 that are up are working. They're on York Hills Drive. I included some photos so you could see a before and an after. I think they do fairly well. I mean, the lux measurement was probably 7 point something for each versus a conventional AC powered one. I measured one of those and it's like 20, 21. So it's about a third of what you'd see from a regular AC powered light. However, you know, these areas didn't have any light, so a 7's definitely better than when we measured. I think it was 0.5, 0.4, you know, it's pretty dim. So that's that. The only other thing I didn't put in there that I thought about while I was sitting there was regarding the compost tumblers. We started deliveries last Friday. We'll do deliveries tomorrow. So that'll mean about 2/3 are delivered. The last third will come next week. And then there is a new grant round with St. Louis County Department of Public Health. I think I'm just going to go ahead and submit for another grant application for those since they were successful. We have enough recycle cards to get through another year. Typically, I would get those, and in this case, the compost tumblers were getting $7,000 for the up to 70 or so we could purchase. Right now, we've got 55 confirmed orders, and there's some folks that want to be on a wait list. And then the fire department wanted to participate too, so I'll drop one off for them. And that's it.
Great. Any questions?
All right, thanks.
All right, move on to Planning and Development Department. Do we have anything?
The update on that is just the recruitment and hiring update. So, because Jason provided me with a status update for the entire city, I just dropped everything in there. So in administration, Sherry, who used to be the city's customer service receptionist, has now been promoted to the permit technician in planning development. And we have extended an offer to someone to take on the position of the customer service clerk. And we expect that person to start on Monday. So we are fully staffed. The new finance director, Robin Jones, started last week Monday. So she is on board. And Gina Jarvis will continue in a part-time status with us indefinitely and fill in the assistant finance director role. We think that her experience and history with the city is very valuable, and so we are going to keep her on board. Also, Public Works, one of our sanitation drivers, what we say in here. So we are looking to fill that position as well. But in the interim, we have other Public Works employees who have stepped up, so there is no delay in service delivery. Then in planning development, we have extended an offer to an individual for the code enforcement official. Instead of filling at the full-time, this individual is working part-time and started on the 14th of June. The permit technician, as I said, has also been filled, and we have 2 inspector positions, and they are both filled now. We have an inspector 1 and inspector 2. The inspector 2 started on the 28th of June. We've received 4 applications for the building official at this point, and we have also extended an offer to an individual for the planning development director, and we expect that that person will be starting in 3 weeks. So I think other than parks, where there are no vacancies, that covers the scope for Public Works Committee.
The building official, it says 4 applications, none considered. So
That's
you
right.
got 4 applications, but are you considering?
Not at this point.
So that's still there's
It's
still a
still
hole.
vacant, yes.
Officer is.
Bolo, if I may ask a question. When we have a permit technician, you said the permit technician is part-time or the code enforcement official is part-time?
Code enforcement is part-time.
Code enforcement official. So is that person then working, a set amount of hours or just on call, or how does that part-time status work?
Set amount of hours, about 20, 25 hours a week.
Okay.
And in the interim, while the other two inspectors go out, they're also filling in that role. You know, as they drive around looking for violations and responding to violations that are brought to the city's attention.
Okay, great.
So is the plan to go full-time with that code enforcement officer, or is the
Well,
part-time person?
this individual is a retired individual and does not desire to work full-time. So, but we're still actively looking for full-time. So until we find such a person, he will help us, you know, bridge the gap. I think maybe 2 years ago, that position was part-time. And when we realized that maybe the workload required there be someone there full-time was when we brought that to the board and it was approved for full-time. So stopgap until we're able to fill that.
Okay, so we're down 1.5 equivalent heads. Okay. Anything else, Jeff?
No, I'm good. I'm good. Thanks.
Okay. Move on to item 7C, Sustainability Commission. I don't know, Eric, you taking this?
All right, so for Sustainability Commission, just a quick update that our last meeting, we had Victoria Donaldson, who's the program manager for the Green Dining Alliance, came and gave a presentation about the GDA and just some tips and how, advice on how the city could promote a GDA sort of environment. Talked about even like dining districts, those type of things. So we attached the presentation. It was very, I found it very informative. And the commission's going to take up the discussion of her presentation, a little bit more of what we can do next meeting. And then we also talked about the outline of the sustainability plan. And so we basically, we presented an outline and then the committee decided to create a subcommittee of the tasked with the creation of the sustainability plan. So the idea is that we'll basically try to write it kind of real time instead of staff writing it, then coming back to each meeting and then slowly digesting it. So hopefully this will be a more efficient way of doing it. And our first meeting is July 13th. So that is coming up next week. So those are the two updates there.
Great. Now, on the Green Dining Alliance, I mean, I think that would be a great opportunity as we're expecting new businesses to move into Brentwood, have that in place. You know, if you look at the map of Green Dining Alliance businesses, there's a big empty space for Brentwood. Like an opportunity, we can do something there. Okay, Eric, while you're up there, we'll move on to 7D, Parks and Rec.
Yeah, so the first thing is a quick update on the pathway between Bridgeport and White. And unfortunately, I don't have a great update on this one. The homeowner on White is having a hard time finding a fencing contractor come out and move the fence. When you're talking about 4 or 5 poles, pulling back the mesh, putting in new poles and moving mesh, unfortunately, the contractors are so busy, the expression, they're not even getting up for this one. You know, I've talked to them a few times. We have kind of a typical diamond fencing that we use for city projects. They can't even respond. They're so busy. And I mean, if you've heard, contractors are they have tons of work. So I spoke with them. I spoke with the homeowners last week before, and gave them a list of just any fencing contractor I know of, could think of. I mean, even stuff that I use personally. And then ultimately this week, I thought of one more that I gave them, which happens to be a small contractor in Brentwood. She got a hit from them. They are coming out hopefully tomorrow or today or tomorrow to kind of take a look. So hopefully he'll be more likely to do it. My hope was that since he's a local Brentwood person, he knows the path, maybe it will jump up to his list if he knows it's going to help the community. So that's the goal. She was real excited. She called me back. It's like, hey, he called me back. So, I mean, so that to me was a good sign at least.
Lose you, Jeff?
I'm here. No, I'm good. Thanks.
All right. Now, my red light's on. There it goes. Slowly but surely. Red light is on. Worked earlier. Technology's grand. There we go. All right, so let me preface this. So over the last month or two, obviously, there's been a number of topics that's kind of come up, whether it's through committee meetings, board meetings, just ultimate emails from aldermen, things like that. And so basically, I put them all together into a presentation because I figured it'd be the most efficient way of doing it. So you'll see is that there's a number of topics. There we go. A number of topics. So the dog park, we've talked about. Brentwood bound parking is one that's been discussed. The soccer field, Brentwood bound maintenance, just a discussion of how we're going to keep that park looking new and pristine as we move forward. You probably should never use the word pristine. A turf management program throughout the whole rest of the park system. And then as we talked about, the master plan. So the idea is really to give you guys some information and really kind of start the conversation on these topics. And ultimately, if we can come to a decision, great. If we need to take those decisions or topics back up in another meeting, that would work as well. I will warn you again, this is about 60 some odd slides. My thought was that maybe we wouldn't do it all tonight. I'll do the dog park, we'll stop. You guys will tell me, hey, let's go to the next one. And so again, it doesn't have to be all done tonight. There's all things I needed to get done, and so they're done. So.
Eric, real quick, is whoever's running the AV, is it possible to share what he's projecting to the Zoom cast as well so I can see it? Or is that because I can't see any of his presentation?
Janet, share it? Or can you share it? Who's sharing? Document. Email it to her or me?
I mean, if it's too much
It's so large.
technical,
So large, okay.
if it's too much technical issues, then I can just maybe get access to it and follow along and then follow up.
What's the most efficient way? Oh,
I don't know if email will allow that.
that big.
Yeah. Let me see if I can PDF it real quick. Sorry. Real exciting work right now. I can multitask. I don't know if I can. Because the first part's the dog park, and the dog park is something that we maybe I can get going on that, Alderman Gould, while I wait for this.
Yeah, and that's fine. I can follow along, and then pretty familiar with most of it.
Can you upload it to Board Docs, Eric?
I may.
Jeff, the
If you
font's
do that,
kind
I
of
can
small.
work.
I can't quite read it either, so just so you know. Maybe I need new glasses.
If we're able to upload it to Board Docs, then everyone will be able to see it.
That would be great.
Let us know so they can refresh.
I'll be getting the presentation shortly, and it should be also being uploaded to Board Docs. It is done. So you can go
I can
either
read
route. The one-time technology is good.
Right.
All right, so we're back on board, if you guys have it. But again, just the brief introduction of the dog park is, we opened the Hanley Dog Park in 2017 as kind of a temporary dog park until we could build a permanent dog park. We had 670 linear feet of fencing, which is about 22,000 square feet, give or take. It's not a perfect square. So in April of 19, we, in partnership with Clayton, we opened the new dog park in Norm West. That had 1,236 linear feet and almost double the 40,000 square feet. Again, not perfect. We closed it down in January 2020, and then May 2021, the Board of Aldermen voted to remove the unfunded dog park from the Brentwood Bound project area. So at that point, as people started talking about, and as we kind of staff started talking about, is that then Hanley Dog Park becomes kind of our primary dog park, and as we've been incrementally improving it, what should we do further on? And so here's some of the things we have done. We went from just a punch key to the gate enhancement where it's the keyless, the keyless entry, turf maintenance in 19, and the water fountain. And again, we added the decomposed crushed granite and added some more, some seed and straw and some of that stuff for this year. So again, it's small things. We've been doing that. I forgot the water fountain. Oh, I didn't. The water fountain's there. So it's small things that we've been doing. We added the agility stations, so that's what I did forget. So, I mean, we've been doing some things to try and make that a little bit nicer as we move forward. So, could we expand the dog park? And what you see here is, I believe, is something that Alderman Gould gave to at least Alderman Wegge, but I think the whole committee. And the idea is to kind of expand it, go past the current pathways we have and further on. As you see, the green, the pink line's the old fence, the green would be the new. And so, again, it's something that we could obviously consider. We haven't done a whole lot of costing because we wanted to make sure, the committees and the board's ultimate decision. But if you look at costs, the cost would be to replace and add fence posts. So if we went, according to Alderman Gould, and maybe I misunderstood, but using the fencing materials, that replacing all the fencing or just adding that fence to the new part, again, I wouldn't suggest having two different fences, just for aesthetic reasons, but we would have enough if we want to do the whole thing in the old dog park fence. So we could do that. We'd have to replace the fence, or add new fencing. We'd have to realign the trails because obviously the trail goes this way and out, and so even Alderman Gould kind of mentioned how you'd have to realign that trail. And then we, most likely crushed granite seems to be the preferred choice, so we'd add more crushed granite. So again, that's something that we could do and put into our capital program, and I think we'll move forward with that. If we do want to look at expansion, I mentioned this, and I would continue to say this section right here, I would say we should talk to the Little Bit Foundation about. And what that is it's a space that was utilized by the previous owner of that property for, you saw, kind of like their semis and their trucks. Well, Little Bit has just cleared it out. They're not really doing anything with it. It doesn't appear to be utilized. We may be able to purchase that, and that could assist with the dog park and trail realignment. And if we add just that section, that's another 0.16 acres, I think total, if I did it right, we'd add with the first expansion and this almost half an acre. And so at that point, you can get a decently sized dog park in that area where in the past, it could be a little bit small. So we have that. And then we obviously can look at additional features and amenities as well, and things like topography and tunnels. And I always like this one down here. I mean, this is one you do as we do all the other renovations. You just get a pipe, you pour material over it, and then it's just a pipe the dogs can run through. Kids like it a lot too. But you have just a smaller log is the basic one there. Additional agility items, there's tons of those things. Water feature, if we really want to go a full-fledged water feature, it could be something as snazzy as the thing popping up on the bones, or it could just be an easy pull. We've seen both. As I was doing research for this, there's full splash pads for dogs. That might be a little bit overboard, but heck, they look nice. So we could do all those things. There's even, do we want to add like a dog wash station to that area and those type of things. So I think it's something we continue to improve if that's what we want to move forward on. And, again, this is kind of the easiest one. So really it's, what is it that we want to do moving forward? So, that's kind of where I stop. And again, I don't know if we want to take up any of these things tonight or just kind of go through, but I will stop here.
I'll start, Eric. I mean, first of all, it's a really good-looking dog there.
Purposely placed.
Yes, Bruce Springsteen Weggy right there. So, yeah, I mean, I will tell you, I was at the dog park today, and again, somebody was saying that they really thought the decomposed granite was great. I heard that from 2 people today while I was down there, and what happens is the water, when it rains, it does puddle on there, but it's just water, and so you actually see dogs, and I take my dog now even right after it rains, and yeah, they get wet, but they were already wet walking down there, and so the mud seems to be mitigated, and I haven't heard, other than it's a little dusty. But somebody said today, I'd rather have the dust than the mud. So it seems to be working. I mean, the only thing I hear is we need to make it bigger, and people would like a water feature. The one at Maplewood, I was a member there when and I would say the speed that we're improving this dog park is much faster than Maplewood did it. I remember when they got their first bench; it was donated by a dog food company, and now we have 5 benches down there, and so I think we're moving very quickly, but I think a water feature would be very desired, and I hear that feedback from people as well. So I would be in favor of, expanding it. I don't know about buying the Little Bits Foundation. Maybe that's kind of a phase 2, but at least seeing what we could do maybe on the cheap to expand this thing. Just my 2 cents. Yeah, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously I'm in favor of expansion, and I'm in favor of whether it's on the, I don't know that I would classify that I'd be, supporting anything that would be on the cheap. I think that we owe it to the folks that expected a more polished professional dog park to now take the material we have and if we have to buy additional fencing to make it unified and feel complete. I'd say let's look at what it costs to expand and realign the trails, and even if it is a phase 1, phase 2, with the potential of a secondary expansion to the if we were to acquire the Little Bit Foundation property, I think that's even better, I guess, if we had the membership to support it. If we had the frequency and membership to support a double expanded space, then I'd say it'd be a worthwhile investment. But certainly the slight expansion and improvement overall would be, I think, a good thing to do.
I just have a comment. I think expanding the dog park is great, and sort of this staged improvement I'm all for. I have a comment on the trail realignment. I don't run anymore, but I used to run a lot over there, and the trail that goes behind the dog park, like when I would run, it would be dark, and I would never run back there at 5:30 in the morning in the winter between trees and the dog park. So I mean, at 5:30 in the morning, you could run out to the street. I would run on the street, but I'm just bringing that up because we want to make sure that that is a path that people feel comfortable on at all hours, and maybe there's a different way to realign the path so that we have maybe the dog park comes out and the path's on the front, or there's some different way to make it great for dogs and people.
I'm for the expansion, but I'd like to maybe direct staff to talk to Little Bits or Foundation, and has there been any communication whatsoever with them?
No, and to be honest, a lot of the things you're seeing tonight are I don't want to call them harebrained, but they're they're me saying, hey, yeah, I can spend money. I can fix anything with money. So it's one of those things where as we look at expansion, it to me seems like an unutilized portion of land for a little bit that we could then utilize for our dog park. So
we don't know that for certain. They are undergoing renovation of that building because when it rained last August, their facility did flood. you know, all those properties back there. So they do have an application before the city that involves stormwater and floodplain, flood elevation. But we certainly, if there's direction, approach them and see if they have interest.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion to direct staff to go talk to Little Bits and see what the art of the possible is on the land there, and a second by Nancy. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Yes, Steve?
And the reason being, I just think if that is a possibility, if we're going to do this expansion, I got to believe it's cheaper going in to know, take that land and add the other portion that we already have to just get the material and everything we need for that entire area now, or at least get a bid as an alternative on what that cost would be.
It is, especially when you're talking about like mobility costs, when you have a contractor have to come out and then mobilize again a second time.
Right.
That's usually where you lose money when you phase projects like this. But I'm happy to kind of, as I bring it forward, you know, bring a phase 1, phase 2. If we want to push them both together, we can definitely do that.
Yeah, and I would think by then you might have some type of feel for
Yep.
parking pad.
Okay, so I think we're done with the dog park. You know, I think Eric was asking if we wanted to continue on with this. So the next thing is parking, and then we have soccer park. Does anybody have a preference on, do we want to do it in that order, or do we want to go ahead and talk about those two things? Okay.
All right, so Brentwood bound parking, again, this kind of came up during discussions during, you know, the playground and the pavilion design. So again, just a quick thing, the parking lot has 66 spaces, which the design team feels is size for normal park usage. The real question is special events. You know, if we have bigger events or if we have even a bigger thing in the pavilion plus park usage, will we have enough parking? And so, you know, the idea was to look at different options. And we kind of talked about some of these already, but I just fleshed these out a little bit more. Option 1 is Russell, which is misspelt Avenue. So Russell has 138 spaces along the side. So this is just, you know, along the levee, basically. So we have 138 spaces. And honestly, if we go down in the park as well, into Brentwood Park, there's another 52 down there. And we'll be redoing that lot and hopefully adding more when we do our mill and overlay of Brentwood Park. So there are spaces there. It's about a quarter of a mile walk, which isn't terrible, especially when we're going to be encouraging people to be sustainable and walk from their homes through the pathway anyway. So again, it'd be hard to say, you know, this is bad when we're asking you to walk from, you know, Ward 1, since you can. The other option is that we have those 2 lots on Hilldale. You know, these are just lots that ultimately get used once a year during Brentwood days, and that's the only time we use them, and they sit basically vacant the other time. Now, we did receive received FEMA buyout money for that, so we just couldn't put up a impervious structure, so it'd have to be somewhat pervious. It'd have to be pervious, whether it's pavement, grass pavers that allow water to seep through, a rain garden in the middle of it, something. We'd have to make sure we followed that. And so while I say we estimate, that's basically saying if I have the land, looking at the square footage, looking at the turn radius that you need for parking, I look like on the left side, the west side, you can get somewhere between 20 and 28. You may be able to get 4 rows in there, 2 on the outside and then 2 right down the middle. Might be tight, so that's why I'm not 100% sure. And then 20 to 30 on the east lot. It's a little bit longer, so you get a little bit more there. So again, that's one option. The other option is looking at parking arrangements. And again, this is something we did talk about, but there are a lot of lots and a lot of big lots around us that hopefully we may be able to kind of work with. So the first on your top left is Manchester Road and Mary. And so that is basically the building. We're working with that, the owners of that property on the left to redo part of their parking lot already. So, you know, from what I understand, they might not be the easiest to work with, but we can see. I mean, especially if we're talking after 5 p.m. and on the weekends when typically they aren't there, they might be a little bit more receptive to it. The other one across the street is where American Locksmith used to be, and it's going to be a MoDOT buyout. So when that gets bought out, it'll be empty property until it can be redeveloped. So at this point, you know, temporarily we could put one in and at least have something temporarily where you can just hop on underneath the tunnel and go through the tunnel and get into the park. It might also work as a really nice trailhead for the GRG trail as well. So if you don't want to park somewhere else, you can park there and then hop right on there and get to get to the city, really. The second is South Brentwood and Russell. And again, the front part of the building is a physical therapy. So again, they are primarily Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. So nights and weekends, they'd be open. That's basically that whole front and side is that's their building. I'm not 100% sure who's here. It looks like Special Olympics. It looks like an office complex. So maybe, again, they might be open. The arts, the dance studio there would have some parking, but maybe we can work with the owner with just the frontage, maybe frontage and certain number of spots on the side. You know, something, again, then you're right at Russell, you go right across the street. The last are all the properties on Manchester Road. And again, there's a lot of them. There's the Schnucks property, there's the Society of the Blind building, and then there's Ace Hardware. And so the thing there is that typically we know those are busy places, especially Schnucks, Ace at certain times of the day. But again, I think especially the Ace lot, it's not maxed out. This Society of the Blind obviously is a Monday through Friday. So again, we could, nights and weekends, we could have maybe see if we can work with them on this lot over there. It's, again, something we'd have to talk to planning about and make sure, especially the ones on Manchester Road, are not violating code, but it might be something we'd be able to do. Now, ultimately, if we have events and people can't find places to park, they're going to park in these places anyway. So if we could be a good neighbor and make sure that we have those discussions with them, we can do that. And a good example is St. Mary Magdalene. When they have their summer carnival, people are always parking across the street and just walking across. So hopefully we'd be able to work something out with them. The third is, again, you want to talk kind of pie in the sky, and it is not by any means my favorite option, but again, I wanted to show that we investigated everything, is we could use that land previously dedicated to the dog park. Now, increased parking, you know, we have over an acre, so we can probably get 50 to 60 more spots there. The problems, and this is where I get a little bit hesitant, is one, we reduce that green space. Part of the nice thing is that we had another passive area, or if we wanted to program that something else in the future, we lose that green space. The other issue is when you walk this part right here, our thought is you come here and then you go down while you still have the conflict with pedestrians and bike users in that whole area right there. It's created for MSD trucks to come through so the trail could handle it. And we are going to have MSD trucks come through there, but we're talking once every quarter compared to every day. If we did something like that, my suggestion is we look at a 2-lane road with a pedestrian path that was separate, maybe even with bollards that we could then make sure that everyone's safe. And can we do that in and out? So that's the real question. You know, again, that is area that's supposed to be used for flooding. I mean, that area will flood based on when we have the 100-year flood event. So we'd have to look at something, again, pervious or grass pavers. And then really, even if we touch it, the engineers would probably have to redo their calculations, which then means we're talking about a change order to look at this and all, and if we have to design and everything. So again, not my favorite option, but I did want to throw it out there as one that we were considering. And so the other thing just to mention is the fact that in the redevelopment plan, and we've talked about this, is a plan for those 2 parking garages. I think the plan is to make sure that we have a parking garage that then you can easily get across to the trail and then get into the park as well. So hopefully some of this might only be temporary until we get the area redeveloped. But again, that's kind of what we've come up with in the last 30 to 60 days and open it up for this discussion.
I kind of agree with Eric. I think option 3 is out. I just don't see option one being viable as far as people using it. I want to be down in the Brentwood, in the Brentwood bound area. Option two, talking to some of those property owners.
So I don't know if Eric mentioned that there would possibly be compensation with the shared use agreement, did you?
I did not. I mean, obviously, we'd ask them if they'd be willing to work with us, but most times you're talking about compensating them for something for the use of that parking during those times.
Yeah, I pretty much don't like the paving the former dog park at all. We're gonna build this beautiful building there to look out on parking, and I just don't like that idea. But the one thing you said tonight that I hadn't thought about was parking at the trailhead, and that is sort of an issue when people bike, and we're assuming people will bike from Brentwood, but maybe hopefully one day in the not too distant future, this will then connect to the Deer Creek will then connect over to, over at Lansdowne, and then people can go all the way to Jefferson Barracks Park and right from Brentwood. So at that point, there may need to be parking sort of designated for the bike path, and that was a concept I hadn't really thought of until tonight, and I don't know that long-term where the American Lock was or located is a permanent spot, but it is something to really think about.
Hey, look, this is in the plan. This is American Locksmith, that property right there, because there's, so that's the idea of the mixed use is a mixed use area right in there. So that was in the original redevelopment plan, which is why this, we're considering it temporary because it's something long range the city wants to redevelop.
That's it.
Yeah, Jeff?
Yeah, I'm in agreement. You can just stop thinking about option three for sure. I like option two. I do think that your point on option one, that we already have 138 spaces along Russell that, are accessible, and once the new, supposing that we do go through with the new sidewalk and the crosswalk there at the Russell, I think that will help tremendously. And then I think in combination with that, and I've always actually, just for the fact that I live real close to it, I've always kind of felt that what is now the Alpha Graphics building, or not even there. I mean, there's nobody there. But the old American Locksmith, I think that's always in my mind been an ideal spot for a trailhead parking type of situation. Just the sheer factor that it's a very small lot, so and it's bordered by some good residential and the apartment complex. So it's kind of as far as the developer is concerned, I don't know that it's a very desirable lot. So we might as well make it a very useful to the park system type of situation. So I'm a fan of that, and are exploring what that would take. Obviously, we know that MoDOT's going to be purchasing it for their right-of-ways, but then after they turn it over to the city, what do we do with it? I think let's explore what that would cost. And then I think I like the idea. I don't like the idea of approaching the big lots like Schnucks and Ace and all of that, but I like some of the other smaller adjacency ones, like the one in red where you circled, that's right at Russell and Brentwood there. And then I think the one right there on Mary Avenue would be good to approach them to see if there's any interest there, and what would that require? Would they expect compensation, or is it just a mutual agreement? I think we should at least explore that option.
Thanks, Jeff. And yeah, I'm in support of option 2 as well. I mean, I think it gives us the most flexibility. We don't know what this is really going to look like, honestly, you know, in terms of special events. The way Brentwood is going, everybody's going to have a golf cart at that point, apparently. So, like, you know, I guess they can just park that in the grass.
Have you noticed them already in the community?
Yeah, they're all over.
Oh, they're all over the place over
I
here.
don't know if we have provision in the code that allows it or disallows it. I was gonna research that, but I've been seeing
Unrelated,
them.
but I think public safety should maybe come up with clear guidance because
Yeah.
people are operating on word of
see
mouth
that.
and
Oh,
yeah, no.
what they think. So, but unrelated, but I just think it would be, you know, lock in like another 60 spots somewhere when maybe we never use it, and you know, plus, you know, who knows what development's going to happen on Manchester? Maybe there is going to be a large parking lot. Maybe there's an opportunity we can, you know, bake that in from the beginning, that we can share that, and that'll be right along the path. So I think option 2 just gives us the most flexibility going forward. So. Yeah, so we have a motion by Alderman Lockmiller and seconded by Nancy.
Motion, so if, oh, you'll allow, yes, seconded by Nancy, yes, sorry, yes.
To go with option 2 for now, and at least explore those, and we have some time too, right? I mean.
Yeah.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, so I propose we do the soccer field, and then we let Eric get out of here, and then we can pick up the other 3 topics next meeting.
Okay.
All right, so again, just a quick little background. In May, the board voted to remove the soccer field in the project area. So we were asked to consider alternate locations. And just for kind of the topic of conversation, I just put in, when you look at really the 2 fields that you're really kind of discussing is the U11, which is kind of 5th and 6th grade, is 70 to 80 yards long by 45 to 55 yards wide. That is regulation if you want to play games and tournaments, things like that. High school is 100 to 120 yards long and 65 to 85 yards long. Just for some background, we never had, the City of Brentwood never had a full-size field down at Northwest Park. We were always that U11 size every time, even when we, originally before we start working with MSD. So we're about 80 by 50, if I remember correctly. And what was proposed was 75 by 50. So we were proposing a U11 size field. And again, as a soccer coach and someone who's coached forever, you can make whatever size field work for whatever your needs are, unless you're trying to play games. So that's kind of the first topic of conversation. So the first option that I kind of came up with was Brentwood Park. And when I want to talk about Brentwood Park is a couple things. And one, you know, staff would already talked about how can we expand Field 4, you know, and it might be that we need a little bit of leveling over here and some tree removement. We've already done some of that, but you're kind of getting choked off there anyway. The light poles are here and here, so you're kind of in between that. But we feel fairly confident we can get a U11 size field. We think we can get 70 by 45. It'd be a smaller U11 size field, but we think we can make it fit there. So that's one thing we've talked about. The other thing is we talk about at any outfield, you look at field 1 and whether you go this way or you go diagonal, you could do either, but you get choked off by kind of this length or this width or this width. And so you're really at a max width of 40 yards. So you're still kind of, you don't quite get that high school size field lengthwise. And then the last thing on field 1 and 2, again, is to really consider 2 things. The first is the lights. And Alderman Golder kind of talked about this earlier. We have these 2 lights, which are very inefficient in field design. These were placed out there a long time ago, so we're dealing with those. And so we thought about, you know, doing it the most efficient and cost-effective way. You'd have to kind of go in between those 2 light poles, which means you're going this way. That doesn't give you, and for those who don't know, there's a hill, basically the last 15 feet, so about 5 yards is a hill going up the incline. We used to have our fence up there. We brought it down because our fence was getting too beat up by flooding and things like that. When it rains, what happens is all the water comes down these 3 streets, Bremerton, Lawndale, and Manderley. There's an inlet here. The inlet's supposed to go, it starts at the top, it goes underneath the railroad, and it's supposed to funnel into this drainage ditch out to the creek. Secondarily, we have basically an inlet, actually it's an inlet up here, that goes down here and takes it, supposed to take it this way and this way. Those ditches are very, very inadequate for the water flow that we get coming into the park, and that's why we flood. And when we flood, the water basically flows this way diagonally to the corner. And it's, you know, the joke is when we have a really good water event, where is the dumpster? Because dumpsters always wind up here, and where are we gonna find it? A lot of times we'll find it down in this corner. So we have enough water where it goes over fences, or a lot of times it goes this way and then that way. So, I mean, it's kind of fun. I'd love to have some cameras in there and to kind of really take a look at it. But I mean, that's kind of the way the water flow is. So if you go this route, you can get max length. You just can't get width. You're actually, the smallest is the 35 feet. So that is kind of where we're at there. So that's kind of option one, part one. Because option one, part two is Alderman Gould gave us a proposal, and I just want to kind of talk about this a little bit as well. So his talk is putting a 99 field. We already discussed that. We're in agreement. We think we can do that. And then so Alderman Gould really wanted to spend my money, which is great because I like spending money too. And so he talked about flipping the ball field, field 3 over here. And so the idea is a couple things. Is that one is that in all grand scheme of things, in a true ball field complex, you'll kind of see what's called the clover leaf or four corner type thing. So this is more traditional of what you'll see in sports parks, is kind of the fields back to back. You do need 25 to 50 feet in between. They recommend 50 feet if you're going to play adult softball, so we'd probably be looking some of that 40-ish to 50-ish feet. And then if you do that and we regrade this, we're really looking at that 65-yard width probably doesn't appear that that's possible. Now, if we can maybe regrade some of this stuff out and do something like that, maybe we can sneak a little bit more, but we're gonna be narrow. It's still more than that 35 yards that we had, but it's not quite enough. Secondarily, you're looking at the left field fence here being real short. We went out, we tried to measure it. It's hard to measure exactly, but we're really looking at probably 180 to 200 feet, and that is short for softball. And then we're putting balls into that lumber yard, and they might not be too happy with us. Now, we could have a green monster, and that would be really cool. And basically, you just put up a 20-foot wall, and you call it the green monster, the brown monster. You probably sponsor the heck out of it. We could have a lot of fun with that thing. And so there's ways to kind of go around that and that aspect of it. And again, this way, because of where that hill is here and where we have to kind of start here with the water and the ditch and everything else, that 100-yard length is pretty tight too. So we're not quite a full field, but it's close. It could be closer. The two things, obviously, we'd have to move the lights. And that comes with it a pretty darn good expense. So we'd have to kind of look at those type of things. And then also, we'd really want to look at water flow, because it's great if you put this field out here, but if it puddles all the time, that's not going to work. And what do we do? I mean, there's lots of things we can do. If we're, again, looking for ways to spend that money that I can spend for you, one of the things I really want to talk to is it's an engineer like Corner Schiffer, and they're helping us out. And I want to talk to them to see how we actually get this water flowing better through those things. Do the ditches need to be resized? Do we need to go maybe more of a concrete type ditch, which wouldn't be the most attractive thing, but at least it works? Do we go even more expensive and put in piping from these inlets all the way to the creek so you never see it? It has to be well done, because if not, you get the breach like we have out in over here. If you really want me to spend money, we could raise this field up 10, 20 feet, put a water storage tank underneath, and then basically all the water will go into it until it can seep out. We're talking millions of dollars for that. Again, then I can put turf on it, and I can have a really nice field. And we could do a lot of those things. If you do that, then you can actually put the infields in turf. You have this whole area that is turf, and not just, you don't have dirt. So again, I can go any route. Again, it's just kind of what we want to do. And again, if I'm really spending money, maybe the lumberyard's tired of having that area flood out, and maybe keep expanding this way. Again, I'm just looking at ways you can spend your money on this one. So, but again, I think it's worth topic of discussion. That's why I'm bringing it forward. The other option, which we talked about before, is Mount Calvary. This is something I think some of the Alderman Lockmiller and Waggy probably have seen, because we brought this back. I'm not sure, Alderman Gould, you probably have not seen this. I'm not sure, Alderwoman Tice, if you've seen this or not. But the idea when we went to talk to Mount Calvary is we kind of brought two options. One is, we can get a full-size multi-use field there. And part of that is the topic of conversation with Brentwood High School because they need practice facilities specifically for their football team. And so would this be a three-party partnership moving forward? And then if we move forward, we can do something over here, walking trail space like that. If we do a little bit bigger park feature and a smaller field, you can still probably get a 9v9 field, a U11 size field in there with some more park features. Just the one thing we have to be cognizant of is that they require a playground pavilion because of their daycare, the preschool. So we want to make sure that we have those two things in there at the very least. So again, when we had this conversation a couple years ago, we kind of got a really high level cost estimate, and I added those two. They didn't increase from the last time, so they probably have gone up a little bit, but that's kind of where we're at with Mount Calvary. The other one, which is kind of, interesting, is, we could follow the European trend. And when you go over to Germany, Paris, is they have these small-sided soccer fields all over the place. I love them. I'm a soccer player. You see kids just playing 3v3. They have 5 or 6 lined up right next to each other. And so what we do is it becomes a small space. It's, a good coach can make that work. So the Brentwood High School should be able to use it. They won't be able to play games. They couldn't play games anyway. But again, it gives them, in addition to maybe Brentwood Park, what we do at Brentwood Park, even another option for soccer. You can play field hockey, lacrosse. I mean, they could do other things. It's not just, it doesn't have to be just soccer. You can definitely use it for K-2 games. Staff is kind of, we've talked about a 5v5 adult outdoor league type thing. We can even do that. So again, it's something we can utilize, and maybe we put that in the Hanley Sports Corridor, either right next to the basketball court, and move the skate park over by the inline rink, or vice versa, leave the skate park and we move the move something like this right next to the inline rink. So it's something that, again, it's just another option that we were considering. If we can't go big, maybe we can get at least something else that adds to what we can give them that won't be used for baseball or something like that. So again, that's kind of the options we came up with moving forward. Pretty cheap to millions and millions of dollars.
All right, any questions or comments? Yeah, Jeff?
Appreciate all of the insight on the proposal that I had put together, and I think it, it's still worth maybe looking into the costs of what that might be, even if we couldn't fit a full. So the 11v11 field wasn't what we were slated to put in on Norm West. Is that what you're saying?
That is
It was
correct.
more of a 9v9?
We had a 70 by 50, so it was a U9, which again matched what we had in Norm West Park prior to even MSD coming in.
So you feel pretty confident we could at least put a U9 field on Brentwood 4 with some, finagling of the landscaping that we have there.
Yeah, and again, we don't bring up that area does not flood. So I mean, if we wanted to make that a little bit nicer field and go turf on that, again, I'm talking about spending even more money, but we could have a really nice year-round, at least one year-round field. You don't want to do something like that with special events and things like that, but if we move primarily most of our special events to Brentwood Bound, then maybe we have something, something else to consider. Right.
No, I think I think all of those factors are important to weigh in, because it's a, the Brentwood Park has been a catch-all for everything for a long time, and as it relates to that, it's been a long time coming for it to have a bit of an overhaul and upgrade. So I think we should factor in the addition of the new Brentwood Bound green space, and that's likely going to be the pinnacle of where we have city events, community events. Not to say that we wouldn't have anything over in the Brentwood Park sports area, but I think that we should it seems like a no-brainer to figure out a way to put a better facility on Brentwood 4. I still like the idea of seeing if there's a way to reconfigure, if we're going to Alderman Lockmueller's point about the dog park discussion we had, which I agree with. What would, if we were going to do a major overhaul, what would be the best thing to do, and what would that cost? So I think looking at Brentwood Park holistically would be a good thing for the staff to do, and I think that the residents who need the facilities would appreciate it. Have we, as it relates to Mount Calvary, have we had any additional? This is what you had presented years ago, right? So you haven't had any additional follow-up discussions with them?
We have, it went to their executive board, and it's been a topic of conversation. We talked to Pastor Hankey last February or March, right before, to kind of ramp that back up, and then COVID hit. And so, that kind of squelched those kind of conversations for a little bit. Again, I haven't approached them yet because I want to have this conversation first. One thing to kind of add to what you said, Alderman Gould, as I'm talking on the fly here, if you look holistically at the park, if we do something where you're really figuring out water flow, and maybe you can do underground piping, maybe then this gives you additional parking here. You shift this baseball field over, look at, see what we actually need for baseball field, and maybe you expand a little bit that way too.
Sure.
I mean, if we look holistically, we could do this a little bit more. The one thing I'd say, which I didn't mention, is that if we are going to put, hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars, that's when you really discuss, this has been used and abused, and a lot of it is Brentwood Days. When you put carnival rides on grass, it demolishes what we can do. That soil's so compacted, and no matter what we do, it's hard to break up. And then when we try to, we get the flooding. So if we really do something, I think it then really makes another conversation of what Brentwood Days is moving forward as well.
Oh, sure. I understand that. And that's where, to get back to Bola's initial comment on the American Rescue funding, it's, if let's look at things that would be maybe cost prohibitive for us to consider, and maybe this is a good use of some of those funds to really get it to where, fix some of the years of neglect and years of not necessarily neglect, but abuse that maybe, and if we can do something to help flooding and that problem. I do know a lot of the residents over there probably still, I think they assume that the Brentwood Bound flood mitigation project is going to help flooding here, which we've never said. And so some of the residents that we've talked to, I know Steve and I in some of our meetings, are kind of surprised again when we say, no, the Brentwood Park will still flood, So again, if there are ways to use some of that to mitigate some of the flooding that's happening there, I think long term that's good.
Eric, going back to Brentwood number 4, not reflecting, that picture's not reflecting the pirate playground.
The playground is, so here are your light standards, right there and right there. The playground's on the opposite side of the lights. So we would be okay based on that, and I took that into my calculations. You're close, you're within 5 to 10 feet of it, but again, if we want to get something that's a little bit nicer and wider, it can be done. You're just, you might have a couple balls go into Lockmueller ship.
Then on the softball fields, are we fully utilizing those?
Yeah, we are. I mean, this summer, again, it's always you hope after COVID, but we have leagues on those fields Monday through Friday. So we're able to get 5 nights a week out there. We weren't quite able to get Sunday. We're hopeful. In fact, we had so many teams on Friday night, and Clayton had a couple teams that they didn't have enough for a league. We actually combined our leagues, so we're playing games here and a couple games in Shaw Park every Friday night. So we've had a good turnaround. Rebecca Rebecca, who's our new sports person, did a wonderful job getting teams back through the doors this year.
So on field 4, I like the idea of having a field there as when you watch soccer and you have younger children and there's the pirate playground right there and you're really close to the kids playing playground and your older kids are playing soccer and that seems like a great location. On the Mount Calvary piece, that happened right before I joined the board. I do know, I don't know, I guess you need to talk to Pastor Will again, but I know one of the concerns they have is the upkeep of the land. So is the options that you are the cost estimates there, assuming that they would donate the land or lease us the land? And then the second question is, and then the assumption is that we would maintain all the land that's back behind, all around them?
Yeah, there's a number of these lease options that are done around the city. I know Clayton does one with the Concordia Seminary. It's not quite as robust as this. There's, I think Lake St. Louis is trying to work one out right now. So there's options, there's things out there that have been done. And so we've looked at those, and typically it's a lease. So you lease the land from the organization. You know, I float out $1 per year because that's what most people have done. I got a couple scoffs about that, and not from Pastor Hankey, he's been wonderful, but I think some from the executive committee, because I think they see this land as, to be honest, as a way to kind of help some of the financial concerns they're having. So what the cost is for construction, and then it would be typically in the lease, it's up to the city to maintain. So again, part of it is if we're using the school district, if that's going to be one of their primary fields as well, then maybe there'd be a cost share, at least on the field aspect of it.
Yeah, since there's only one park that only really has a couple of lights and a dog waste trash can on the east side of, or the west side of Brentwood Boulevard, this is appealing to have something on that side for us to walk to.
Yeah, and our master plan says we need a park in that side of town specifically because of that reason.
Thank you.
Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, I had one more thought though. I appreciate all the options that you brought because it opens up quite a bit of ideas. I do like the European trend that you talk about, the very small, you know, or even a futsal type of court somewhere, which is also very popular and can be used for some soccer training, of course. I do think that we need to evaluate the placement and the utilization of the land that's just adjacent to the new basketball court, and obviously with popularity of pickleball growing and the conflicts that we have with basketball players and pickleball players as far as getting access to the court, you know, I do think we should look at, do we have a combination futsal pickleball court or something like that could be, just throwing out another idea for you, something to be considered. So anyway, all good stuff. I appreciate the thinking.
That'll lead to the master plan discussion next meeting.
So do we need to give some clear direction on what the path? We've had a lot of discussion. What we want Eric and his team to do?
I mean, I'd make a motion that he moves forward with a 9v9, exploring the costs of putting in a nice 9v9 or U9 field at the current Brentwood 4 location, and explore the options of a overhaul of Brentwood Park, big picture, and re-engage Mount Calvary to see if there's any additional opportunity there.
I will second that motion.
All right, we have a motion by Jeff and second by Nancy. Comments or discussion? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, great. Well, thanks, Eric. We'll take the next 3 topics next month.
Great.
Gives
And
something to
I
do.
just give myself the saying I have another month, I'll probably tinker a little bit more. So it might be a little bit different because I have another month to play with it. So
So nobody read ahead.
Yeah.
exactly.
No spoilers.
Thank you.
I'll try not to send you another proposal too.
No, they're fun.
Hybrid dog park, pickleball.
I mean, honestly, when you talk about what parks directors love to do, it's this type of visioning. It is, I mean, Brentwood Bound has been a dream for me, and even doing stuff like this is wonderful. So it's been a lot of fun.
Okay, move on to item 8. We have the consent agenda. We just have some meeting minutes on there. Can I get a motion to approve that consent agenda? All right, motion from Nancy and second by Steve. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, moving on to item 9, old business. Continued discussion of using St. Louis County for code enforcement services. So where we were last meeting, we had the county representative come and answer a lot of our questions about what it looks like when the county takes on, I guess, permitting, inspections, building inspections, those kind of things. So I think we got a lot more clarity on that. We were going to talk about some of the costs that were happening there and how much it costs for us. So, Bola, I don't know if you have anything on that.
On the cost for us,
Yeah, we were gonna look at the costs of how much revenue we make and everything, and some of the costs of having inspectors, because I think the basic premise was if this doesn't make financial sense, do we even want to consider it?
right. I am not prepared, sorry,
Okay.
to discuss that today. But I can talk generally that because we have existing staff, you know, we cover their personnel cost as a fixed cost. And then they just perform the workload. But we've noticed that over the last year, when we look at the workload, and I believe Alderman Weggie, you referenced that at the last meeting, and I asked Steve Muskoff, who's back helping us in a part-time status, to pull the number of permits and inspections for me just over the last 17 months. It's increased significantly. And so I said, in an ideal world to him, how would we manage that workload? And he says that they were having a discussion with Chief Cottrell that perhaps these are two options: either a plan reviewer and or a fire inspector would help them catch up with the workload going forward. So that would be an additional cost. But in terms of, and for residential, other than, you know, the minimal dollar amount that you would pay for all these permits, it's really of no additional cost to the residents. But you start to transfer these out to St. Louis County, we would no longer, I mean, we still have that ongoing personnel cost that we have, but then there would be additional cost to the residents for every application if we were to, for instance, transfer residential to them, and same would go, I guess, for commercial. So I can do a little bit more research and speak to that to a greater degree at the next meeting, but I completely forgot about that request of me.
Well, so I went into the budget and I pulled some numbers out in terms of how much revenue we as a city wanted to look at. So the 2021 projected revenue was $255,000 from all permits and inspections. So that breaks out to, I'm just going to throw a bunch of numbers out here, so I apologize, but 35,000 is occupancy permits. Building permits is 181,000, but I don't know how that breaks down between residential and commercial. And then electrical is 16,000 and plumbing is 20,000. So that's the 25,000 or 255,000 of revenue that we get from the permits. I don't know anything about the costs of the people there. I mean, my concern honestly is, you know, Bola went through her plan, but we are still 42% of the planning and development staff is not there right now. We have 42% of the people missing. Now, I know some are coming on possibly in the future, but, you know, how will we know that we are not serving our citizen? How do we know that there's a backlog? How do we know that we're not being responsive? Because I believe the intent of bringing it in-house was, you know, to be more responsive. I had a resident show up on my front porch last weekend and say that his contractor told him that the only way to get an inspection done right now in Brentwood is if he knows somebody. And
That
that's
is
why,
such a lie, and we all know that. That is such a lie.
You're telling me I didn't have somebody on my front porch?
No, no, no. That the only way to get your work done inspected is if you know somebody. We have ethical staff. No one's being paid off.
I'm not saying that. It's not, no, it's not a payoff thing. I think
Okay.
it's because there's a backlog, right? You mentioned that there's a backlog that you're trying to work through.
Right.
Do we have a backlog?
We do have a backlog because we've had vacancies, we've had transition.
Right.
And even before that, because there's been an increase in the number of, construction that we're seeing,
Right.
there is a backlog. Absolutely.
Right. And so it's not that you know somebody so you can like slip them the money. It's more like to have somebody send an email to get it,
Well, I
bumped
mean,
up.
of course, as elected officials, you all call me. And then I had someone call today that submitted an application last night. And then first thing this morning, it wasn't 24 hours. Why hasn't it been approved? And then I get a call from the mayor. And so like, hey, can you go out? Would you do me a favor and just go out? Do you want me to go out? I'll go out. That's what it's getting to. Because if I get a call from you all, I'm going to try my best to expedite it. And that's what I do. That's what I do.
So this, I mean, all these things are my concern of like, number one, would we have visibility if we're not being responsive? How do we know if we are or not? We don't have any kind of what the average turnaround time is. Are we, I don't see anything like that. What is that backlog? How many are in the backlog? What kind is in the backlog? And as the permits are increasing, how are we going to know? Last time I said, it's going to be like boiling a frog, right? We're going to be right in the middle of Brentwood bound building, and are we going to be so far behind that we just can't climb out? This is the concern and why I want to have this conversation with this board. Is there something that we should be doing differently to handle this coming in? And how will we know?
I think that there are additional performance measurements that we can track that we have not tracked. And always when you have the kind of turnover that we're experiencing, I think it's an opportunity for improvement, to develop new best practices. And that's the conversation I've been having with those we've interviewed that are coming in, bringing best practices from where they're coming from, and then learning from the others. So we can definitely start to track better performance measurements. I remember a conversation that someone had with the mayor saying that before we had a 7 to 10 day turnaround. Well, that was not last year. That was not the year before. That was when things were ebbing and flowing, and we're not seeing, people being at home and having more disposable cash to do more work. But now that there's been an increase, clearly it's an opportunity to look at the workload and seriously look at the budget and see, can we afford 2 additional positions in this department? Or is it just 1 additional position that we can afford and try to address the issues that are coming before us? Now, we can control how we respond because there are staff. And what we can control, even though Kurt Jurgensen says, you submit your application, they schedule. If there are concerns, you all would call me. I would probably call Kurt. But the control I have over staff is night and day. I can't call them and say, could you stay 2 hours and do this? I approve overtime. I don't have that latitude. So the level of service clearly is going to be different. But how do we know that we're performing in the manner that we should be? I don't think that you all were getting this amount of calls last year or the year before. So clearly there's been a change, and we need to address that and fix it. So that's how I would respond to it. But I'm certainly open to other directions, from you all as well.
Yeah, Steve?
Make sure your mic's on, Steve. I can't hear you.
Now,
Yeah, I can hear you now.
doing the commercial redevelopment along Eagle Road, did we have to add additional staff to handle?
So you're talking Chick-fil-A
No, I'm
or
talking about
Eagle
the
Road?
whole, like, when,
Oh, back in the early 2000s?
yeah, do you know if they
I don't
did-
know. I wasn't here.
If Brentwood Bound becomes a very popular redevelopment area, can you bring in someone like a Gonzalez to
We've
work?
actually talked about that. That is in their on-call agreement that we have. I remember that when Dan, Lisa, and Eric were going out with that RFP, I said we need to build that in so that if we have need, we can call them, and they've been of assistance. They're what? Oh, they're at the ARB meeting in the conference room. So we do have that capacity, and it's just temporary. And when we no longer need them, we pull it back. But, you know, I'm disappointed in the fact that we have just a huge workload, and just trying to manage it, it becomes a challenge because of the vacancies that we have.
What does Gonzalez just does plan review, right? They're not going out and doing inspections.
Dan, do you want to speak to what they're helping us with? Because we still have our inspectors now that we have the two of them that are doing inspections, so speak to that.
Yeah, just so you know, I mean, they are local. They're in the white building there on Brentwood Boulevard. So they're close, but they can do residential, they can do commercial. They've got folks on their staff that used to work for city government. So O'Fallon, Illinois, you know, a couple other different places. So they're either public works, planning, now they're consultants. But they put on multiple hats. They can do plan reviews. I know they're serving in the ARB capacity. Right now, they're talking about stormwater, new infill housing, you know, and the best management practices. And some of those folks, they submitted the plans for the house or the detached garage or whatever the improvement is that triggered the BMP, but they didn't submit for the stormwater permit. So that's another piece of the puzzle. And some of the people that said there's, I guess, a backlog didn't check all the boxes. They maybe submitted the plans, but for whatever reason, it's just now catching up. But they can serve in multiple capacities, and as Bola stated, it would be cyclical. So when you need them now to get you through the rough patch, they're here. And when you don't need them later, it's an hourly billing rate, so you don't need to keep.
Nancy, I'll let you go first.
So I feel like we have two issues going on. So the first is, do we actually have a backlog? Because I heard from a resident, and turned out builder was the applicant and they didn't have all their stuff in. So even though I thought there was an issue, there was no issue because the stuff wasn't submitted yet. So I guess the first issue seems to be, what's the backlog because we don't have staff? And we need to figure out how to get out of that backlog. So regardless of who does it, but we got to get out of that. I feel like for our citizens, we have to get out of that backlog. The other issue is the issue that Brandon's looking at, which is longer term. What's the best way to do this for our citizens? But I feel like right now we need to fix this. If we truly are backlogged, we need to figure out how to fix that.
And that's why we've brought in Gonzalez. Right. That's how we've brought in PGAV planners. Who else is helping us? I think and then Steve. So it's to play catch up on all of that. And as Alderwoman Tice says, we do have contractors, subcontractors who think they've fully submitted items, but they haven't. And when we take a look at it, well, okay, we're still missing this and this and this, so we can't completely finish processing it. So then we reach out to them. You need to complete your application, and after which we will submit it. And sometimes, because we have staff here, they may say, well, we will authorize you to start this part, and once you complete that, we'll come back out. So there's a little bit more flexibility to assist our residents because we have the staff here. But to the bigger issue, what happens when redevelopment starts, I think that would be an opportunity where we bring in Gonzalez on a temporary basis to help us address that. That's what I would suggest. I do know that when Richmond Heights was undergoing the Galleria, it was really their staff that did it. So they didn't bring, from what I understand, they didn't bring in anybody. But then, not every community has the luxury like we do in Brentwood of infill housing. So I know Maple was just catching up with infill housing. So they could, balance residential with commercial. But here, infill housing is almost through the roof for us. not adding all these other add-ons and additions that, residents are putting onto their property. Commercial, we have the hotel, we have is it the eye doctor?
Yeah, Brenda Institute.
And so anything else that comes along, I think we'll know and be able to prepare and plan for it, because when they submit a proposal for the redevelopment is when we start to gauge, okay, this is going to be big. This is the amount of staff we're going to need to dedicate to it. So we have that conversation. But we're not going to know until we get a proposal from a developer. But, just thinking long-term about the budget, and, our new finance director, Robin Jones, and Gina and I have been talking. We've actually started the budget process internally ourselves and talking about, well, are there going to be requests for additional positions? And I'm thinking I need to know what the cost is for these two positions and whether we can fund it or how we can fund it, because, it's a reality for us. But to the backlog, we can go into MyGov. And going into MyGov will tell you the number of active projects out there. So, and this is from January 1 through current date. For building permits, 15 active building permits, just as an example. This is for commercial. 7 archive, so it's a total of 22. So maybe backlog is not the definition, not the right word, but so there's 15 active. And then when I look at building permits for new, this is residential, there are a total of 48, but there are 34 active. So 34 active, is that a backlog? Or are they just working through the system? I would need to talk to staff to get a better understanding of that.
I think your concern about Brentwood Bound is a valid one, but I think I would rather see that turned over to a Gonzalez automatically. That whatever's going on down there is our staff has nothing to do with it except maybe collecting the permit fees.
Sure.
And then they go down and they do all
Sure.
it sounds like our backlog is in the residential area.
Yes.
And that's not something I'm really willing to have county take over. I don't want to lose that control. If we give them residential, do we have to then go back and start amending all our?
Yes,
code
we'll have to
400 and
repeal,
500?
yeah, the ordinance.
And then who handles violations if we've turned over?
It would be their courts. Because, yeah, I don't know for certain, but just thinking, off the top of my head, if it's not our inspectors that are doing it and taking it to our judge and it's them, then it would, I don't even know if we asked that question of Kurt the last meeting.
I don't think so.
You don't think so? No, I can get clarification, I'm speculating here.
Yeah, and if you look at some of our surrounding municipalities, they stay on top, they keep in-house all their residential. And some of them have given up commercial, but I would like to keep control of that. They've got their own land use type.
Yeah, Jeff, go ahead.
Back to, I think, Alderman Wegge's initial point. I mean, this is all very good discussion. I think there's more of a philosophical discussion of whether or not, we should consider maintaining the control or outsourcing at least part of our services as it relates so that it can manage the workload, our backlog a little bit more efficiently. I would like to, I think the only way that we can make a measured decision on it is whether or not we have a cost analysis done. So, I mean, if our revenue is 250 something thousand annually, I'm assuming that's not, then our cost of our personnel should be, we should make sure that cost ratio that covers at least the cost of our personnel to do that service. And if we're out of balance with that, then, I think we need to kind of look at it and then look at, then if we didn't have that personnel, what are the savings to the city? And then what's the then cost to have the county end up doing a lot of the code enforcement aspects of it. So without a cost analysis done, I think, we can have the philosophical discussions, but I don't know that we can make a measured decision on it until we see what that cost is.
If you look at the budget and look at, I don't have the page number exactly, page 124, under planning development, and you start to add salaries and wages, full-time overtime, employees benefit, that total cost is about $477,200.
Right. So we're not making the revenue on permits to pay for those, that staff to kind of do that job. And I think it's definitely a larger discussion. I had another, the other concern that I think we haven't really discussed yet tonight is what we continue to hear, and it's likely because of the increased opportunities for trade workers to work with private companies. I think filling positions for public municipalities to do code enforcement with the right talent of people, I think our pool has shrunk significantly. So I think it's something we need to factor in, that the folks that we, like the Steve Muskoffs, and that we really want to attract to be part of our inspection department and everything. It's going to get harder and harder as these jobs are more plentiful for them. So I think that's another thing to consider is we're competing against these other municipalities that are also trying to have their own in-house to hire people. And so filling those roles might be more difficult than we think.
Yeah, and Jeff, I mean, I think I wouldn't personally expect that the revenue that we get from permitting to cover the total cost of planning and development, because I think there's a lot of things that happen there, the comprehensive plan, there's some other aspects.
Sure,
so
right.
I mean, I wouldn't expect that to happen, but I do think that data is necessary to understand. I mean, I think it fundamentally comes down, is it just control that we have local control? Is that why we do it? I mean, is that it? And is it worth that? And then also, is that working, right? I mean, do we have control? Because I don't know. Everything is anecdotal. It's all resident. Everything you're hearing, and they might be mad at somebody or something. So it's all anecdotal. And so I would love to see, data, right? Like, to Bola's point, is 15 business and 34 residential, is that a backlog? Is that a lot? I mean, it sounds like a lot to me, based on the history and how many we do a week. Seems like a lot.
It is.
Yeah, Nancy.
So yeah, I'll look forward to hearing more about this and talking about data. The one thing I'd like to add is that I think the stormwater ordinance that we spent so long working on, that's really important to me. The water runoff that's happening with these infill houses on the neighbors who or have existing houses is a big issue. I think the last house that went through before the ordinance went into effect, they're having issues with the neighbor. The neighbor's having issues because of water runoff, and I would I would really not want that to go away. I feel very strongly that we keep that. We worked really hard to get it. So.
Agree.
Yeah, and I agree with that too. And I think that is the uniqueness of Brentwood that we're able to do with that local control. Is that necessary for, say, commercial? Or is there anything, weird about Brentwood and commercial development. Is that an opportunity? I mean, I'm just looking for, I guess I am very worried that we're going to get just so underneath the sled on this that we can't get our way out. And it's going to slow down and it's going to cripple development on Brentwood Bound. That is my absolute fear for all of this, honestly. Okay, so what's next steps?
Cost. The cost analysis.
Okay. So it sounds like a motion from Steve. I think that was the same thing we were planning to see tonight, so we'll kick that to the next.
Jeff mentioned.
Yeah. Okay. So why don't we bring that up next month?
Okay.
I'm happy to help with that too. Oh, you're short.
And then is there any type of further detail we need as far as what how we're handling this possible backlog right now? I mean, is there any information you can put in front of us? I don't even know what to ask for, to be honest with you.
Well, our second inspector just started last Monday. And so even though he's going out there and responding to the permits, he's also learning our process. So that's a slow process. And the fact that we have Steve here helps so that it becomes a more faster, way to learn the process. You come into an organization and there's no one here to tell you how things are done, you're crippled. And so that's what we're dealing with. But we were fortunate enough to have him come back. So that's helping us. And, I don't know.
And that's even more to my point is, and I don't know how that works within the department, but if you've got, well, let's just say Lisa was doing all the new projects that were coming in, going before P&Z, doing all that, and then she was head of the code enforcement. Does that need to be separated out?
Well, the building official is the supervisor, has all the inspectors report to the building official. So Lisa was just the city zoning administrator and did all the plan review basically for things that are going to P&Z. ARB, it was the building official and information coming from the inspectors. Same with board, I think Lisa also did, the zoning administrator also did Board of Adjustment. So what we're doing now with PGAV assisting us is when the new planning development director comes in, because they had a crash course in understanding what our process is, they will also help this individual get reacclimated to the city, then they peel off. So that's just how it works. Good example, when I started, there was no one here to explain anything to me. So I did a lot of research, talked to a lot of people, did a lot of research, and it took an intense 6 months. It's no different.
I mean, is there other data that we could include in, the city administrator weekly report that would kind of give more insight? I mean, we do the number, I
Yeah.
see the number of, I guess it's the planning and zoning, and maybe that's
Yeah,
when
this
the new person
data
comes online.
From MyGov, we can start including that, and what it will show you, it's a scorecard. Number of projects, number of inspections. So in particular, under inspections, it will tell you the numbers that passed, the numbers that failed, which means that applicant has to, correct some things and resubmit. And then it'll tell you a total number of requests for a certain time period. So we can start including that. That's in MyGov. So we have that scorecard already.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'll add something else. I guess I would be curious, it's hard without staff there, but if there's a recommendation of, if there really is a backlog and we anticipate this backlog, what is it that could and
catch up.
should be farmed out? Is it the commercial? Are there other things like swimming pools, I noticed? I don't think we have that many swimming pools, but is that something the county can do? They already do, elevators and explosives, and so are there certain lines of things that take time or a certain expertise?
I think if we're fully staffed, it shouldn't be an issue. when you start, and Steve said I could call on him because he's here, but their meeting has started, so I don't know if he has the ability to come in and talk to a greater detail about what you're saying, because I don't know what I don't know. I just think that if you're going to farm out residential, you farm all of it out to St. Louis County. If it's going to be commercial, all of it. I don't see how you can piecemeal swimming pool from garages, from whatever else.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Alderman Weggie. You want me to do a cost analysis for not just what you mentioned, but the entire department, I presume? You know, whether it's business license, whether it's all of it,
Well, I don't think it's business licenses. I don't.
just,
I
okay,
think
then.
it's the code enforcement and the inspections and the building inspections. I mean, basically what, everything that's underneath the building official does.
Okay. What was that?
Occupancy permits.
Okay.
I think business licenses or anything like that.
No, I don't think so, because I think that's I don't think that's part of this conversation at all.
Okay, so code enforcement, building inspection, occupancy permit, occupancy permits. And as we start to pull the numbers and do the analysis,
I mean, I think that's all the permits, so building, electrical, mechanical, plumbing, signs, excavation, occupancy, construction, inspections.
I guess I would like what we're paying Gonzalez to do those, to look at plans when residential comes in with the stormwater runoff.
I think that
It was a
there
set
is a
fee,
way
if I
to
remember
pass
correctly.
on, what'd you say?
That's for like
If I remember
500.
correctly, it was like 500 or 1,500 or
Yeah,
something.
that
It
will
was a
pass
set
on
fee.
that cost to
Mhm.
the applicant.
And then can we start including that scorecard in the
Yeah,
planning and zoning weekly report?
yeah. I can scan this in and we'll be in there tomorrow.
Okay. Anything else from anybody? Okay. Moving on to item 10, citizen comment.
Janet says there is
Nobody.
no one in the gallery.
All right. Move on to item 11. Looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Hey,
Oh, Jeff, may I, are we
Retract
adjourned?
it.
Okay,
Yes.
we're,
No,
we're,
no,
no,
go
we're
ahead.
adjourned. Actually, I am not able to make the meeting next month, and I don't necessarily want us to change it, but I just bring it up in case someone else is missing the meeting, and then we wouldn't have a quorum. So,
when's our next meeting?
August, whatever the second Thursday in August is.
Because I may,
12th?
12th.
you know what? I may have a conflict as well. Because we're going to be out at August 12th.
Yes.
Yeah, I did tell my wife that I might end up having to virtually attend that meeting while we're in Florida. So,
Yeah, well, I'm out of town that week, and I won't be able to virtually attend, so,
yeah. So,
Okay. We'll
Do-
handle that on email.
okay, perfect. Just,
yep.
sounds great. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Recording